go a little faster. You definitely want to examine like the big O kind of impact of each line, right? Sorry, I'm just doing one more check here. Okay. Oops. Arrays. It's the second. Cool. So this is just going to be just a continuation of like more array methods, right? So some of the ones we saw were like push, pop, unshift, slice, stuff like that. We're just going to be doing more of those, okay? More methods, great. Okay, splice. So splice is very confusing. So I don't know about starting with this. It's pretty aggressive. But let's see, join, concat, nested arrays. Let's start with join. Let's start with join, and we'll make our way up to splice. Okay. So what join does is it takes an array, right? So all of these things we're going to be doing on arrays, right? They're all array related. So it takes an array, and you do that. The name of the array dot. It's the name of the method, array method. And in parentheses, that's how you call anything, right? Dot pop, whatever. So you're calling dot join, and what this does is it takes this array and it conjoins it. It joins it into one string. Specifically, something that looks like this. So it's comma separated, and there's no spaces in between. And this whole thing, if you look at the type of what that thing is one string. Any guesses as to why this might be useful? Taking everything out and just combining it. So this is really useful if your end user or like the system that you're feeding information to is expecting data in a certain type. Okay, so this right here. Do people use Excel, right? CSVs, right? It's just comma separated values. So if you have like an array that represents like a column, and then all these like arrays that represent rows, right? You just do join, right? And you can export that as one big thing. Or right, what's cool is let's take this. Let's say I don't want to put commas in between, right? I don't want to put commas in between. What you can do is names.join, right? You can actually put something in here, right? If I don't put anything in there, it just puts commas, right? But if I put like, let's say a space, that's what gets joined on. That's the separator. So we take the space and we put it in between all these things, and then we combine it, and now this is one big string.
How does it know to go between each thing? Is it just like the function?
Yeah, it's just that's what join does.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what join does, right? And if I do this, let's do this. Put this here. If we do and puts and in between, and with the spaces, right? If I do, let's say like a hyphen like this, whatever you want to put in between each thing. And so you probably see, like sometimes like you might get this weird spammy looking email that kind of looks like this, right? They're probably joining a bunch of names together. And yeah, you could like do whatever you want, and that'll go in between. You can even put emojis. Let's get an emoji here. What's a good one? What's your go-to? Except for the tooth. Everyone uses the tooth.
You use the tooth.
I'm kidding. I don't even know that was a thing. Okay. Boom.
So weird.
Yeah, let's do it. Nice. Great. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Does it always come out with quotes at the beginning?
It does. And it's to signify that this thing is a string. Yeah. Cool. And if you put a number in here, I think that number is just stringified, so it's converted to a string, and now it's part of this thing, right? Yeah, anything just becomes a string. Cool. And lastly, right? Let's say I want to combine all these things, except I don't want the comma, right? The comma is like the thing that happens by default, right? I don't want that. I just want it to be Paul and then immediately George. And so to do that, you just put in an empty string. So what does that mean? That means I want to separate each one of these things with nothingness, right? Nothing is going to go in between these elements. Does that make sense? Cool. Did you guys learn dot split? Okay. I don't think that's in any of the lectures, but let's go over it anyway because like it's the opposite of dot join, where if you have a string, right? And we say, hello, my name is. So what's a good name?
Chauncey?
Chauncey, nice. How do you spell that?
Chauncey.
Like this?
Yeah.
Nice. Hello, my name is Chauncey. We'll say name. Oops, it's a greeting. And if I wanna convert this thing into an array of just the words, right? What you have to do is greeting. Instead of dot join, you do dot split. Dot split, and then in the split, you put in the thing that you want to split on, right? The thing where you want to say, okay, this is one element now, and then okay, this is one element, right? So now you get all the words. So this is really useful if you have like a text document and you want to get the frequency of any given word, right? So now you have all the words in an array and you can do some sort of like for loop and then count up each one. And then you can also, I mean, you don't have to do a space, right? I think space is like the most logical, right? But you can like, I don't know, split by the m's, right? And so that takes out the m and then puts everything else that's not an m, like around the m's, like in their own elements. Does that make sense? Cool. So another trick is, let's say I have greeting equals hello, and I want to reverse this. I want to make it OLLEH. Okay. I can't do greeting dot reverse. They don't allow this, and the reason is because this dot reverse method only works on arrays, right? We can't do it on strings. A lot of things you can do on both arrays and strings. Reverse you can't. It only works on arrays. Well, we do have a way to take this and put it into an array, right? Using split. What split does is it takes a string and it puts it in an array. So let's do that. Do greeting dot split. But again, this isn't super helpful because if we reverse everything in here, it's just that same thing, right? We're not reversing anything. And so if I want to split each character, you do split and then an empty string. Now I get all the characters. And so now I have an array. So this right here, this whole thing together is an array that contains these 5 letters. So if this thing is an array, I should just be able to reverse it like this. Awesome. And how do I go from an array back to a string? Join. Does that make sense?
How do you know when you can
keep chaining and when you can't?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. So the question is then, how do you know that I can do dot split? How do you know this? Well, I know that I can do this because greeting is a string, right? In other words, whatever comes before the dot is something that I can use dot split on, right? Greeting is something that I can use dot split on. We know that for a fact. Okay, well, what is greeting dot split? Greeting dot split is an array. So that means this whole thing is an array. Like this whole thing together is an array. It's this, right? To really show you, I'll say const array, and I'll say console log array. Right? This is an array. So if this is an array, then I can do array dot reverse. Right? I can take an array and I can reverse it. Right? Okay. If I'm doing dot reverse on something, right? And that something is this, then I should just be able to take this and put it right here. Right? If I have let num equals 5 and I do num plus 1, you think like, okay, this is 6. But what is it actually doing? Well, what is num? Num is this. And what is that? That's 5. And so we take 5 and we put it right here. That's what's happening, right? Okay, well, what's array? Array is this. And what's there? It's this. So let's put that and let's put it here. Right? And so now this whole thing is an array. This, I know this looks like really messy, but pretend like this is just like one big variable. You know that this one big variable is this array. And what does that mean? That means if this is an array, I should be able to do array methods on it. I should be able to do things to it, such as join. Does that make sense? Maybe? I guess what I'm trying to say is putting greeting dot split into a variable and then doing array dot reverse, right? These two lines is no different from this line. There's no difference. Because array, literally, I think it's like transitive property or something. If array is equal to this, then I can just put that here and I'm doing reverse off of that thing. Whatever array happens to be.
Does the succinct line equate to less operations, so it's more optimal?
No. Good question. You're still splitting it and you're still reversing it.
Okay.
And that relates to the number of elements that are in the array, no matter what. Good question. Cool. So let's do concat. What concat does is it combines two arrays. Okay, so let's say nums equals 1, 2, 3, and nums 2 equals 4, 5, 6. And what I want to do is I want to conjoin these, right? I want to put these into one big array, right? Let's say there's like a workshop problem like that. Put these into a new array, right? You might do like, okay, let new array equals this, and then do a for loop across this, and then do a for loop across this, and put them all in here, right? Instead, what you can do is you can do nums dot concat, and then the thing that you wanna concat it with. This is short for concatenate, right? Put things together. So take this array and then combine it with this array. And so if I console log new array, we get them all together. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Does the order of nums and nums 2 matter?
Really, really good question. So the order does matter, right? So if I do this, then you're saying take nums 2 and then concatenate it with 1, 2, 3. So this is going to be like the first half. Good question. but concat is like, imagine it's like an ancient tool. It's like in a museum now. You can see, wow, they used to use that, right? But some people like genuinely ask about concat in interviews, which is a little weird. But this is how you do it, right? The better way to do this is, actually there's a few ways, right? But the best way is what we just learned. Is, okay, in here, why don't I just put in nums and nums2? And I'll console log new array. This is almost there, right? So we have these two boxes, and we put it in a bigger box, right? We have these two boxes, and I put them right here, and I put a bigger box around it. All right, so I took these packages, put in a bigger box. Problem is, I want to shake the things out, right? I don't want the nested cardboard. So how do we shake things out? ... Exactly. So this will work. Can also obviously flip it, so that it says nums and a nums2. You can decide not to take out this, so you have like just 4, 5, 6 individually, and then this whole thing has its own box, right? Really, really flexible, and I think this is so much more like readable than concat. Like this is, it's very much like what you see is what you get, right? Here, like it's a little weird because they're like nums and nums2 don't look like they're on the same level, right? Because nums2 is in parentheses and nums isn't. So it feels like, I don't know. But in the end, really, like all the elements are supposed to be on the same level. So I think this is clear. And this is called the array spread operator, the spread notation. Any questions? Yes.
Say we get a job after boot camp.
Yeah.
It's gonna be bad if we don't know the old stuff in case we're looking at old code.
That's a really, really good question. Potentially, it depends on the company you're joining. So if the company is like is very modern and forward looking, and puts in the effort to be up to date, then it shouldn't be a problem. But if you join a company with a lot of like legacy code, so like something that's been around for like over 10 years, it's just not possible to be up to date in the entire like surface area of their tech stack. And so yeah, you're gonna see some older stuff. And it also depends on like the product. So certain products, like let's say like a banking application, right, probably have to support like outdated versions of Internet Explorer, which is so unfortunate, right? But older versions of Internet Explorer only support certain versions of JavaScript. So if you use ES6 and you ship it, right, it's not going to load on the website. And so if you're a banking website, like you're going to want to make sure to support that. If you're not, then you at least want to show a banner that says like, this is not going to be a good experience for you. It's not going to work on Internet Explorer, right? And the more modern websites will just say that and be like, screw it, I'm not going to support Internet Explorer customers because that's not our base. And if you want to see what browsers support what versions of anything, like for example the array spread operator, right? You can go to our favorite website, MDN. It should be your homepage, right? Your new tab page. It'll show you like, okay, how do you use this? Blah blah blah. That's cool. And down here, it shows you who supports this, right? Divided into web browsers, and then mobile, Android, Firefox for Android, Safari, and then kind of like what versions are good, are compatible. And then literally like if you were to use the array spread thing that we just learned and try to ship it to Internet Explorer, it wouldn't work. Not even an edge, which is supposed to be like the new thing. Cool. Good question. Any other questions? Awesome. Okay. Nested arrays. Let's go up to splice. Okay. So splice is what you use. Splice is what you use to add something in the middle of an array, right? Remember someone asked that? Like, so far we only know push and unshift. Splice lets you add in the middle. It also lets you take out something from the middle of an array or anywhere from the array you want, right? Splice. It's really, really powerful, but it's also really confusing. It takes up to an infinite number of optional arguments, many of which are completely different from each other. But let's get into it. So forget about this green stuff, right? Let's just look at here. So we have an array. Okay, we have an array. And what we're going to do is we're going to do names.splice, right? 1, 1. And what this means is the first argument represents the index at which we want to operate. So 1 is going to be here. So that means we want to do something with John. We want to do something at this index. Okay? The second argument, right? The second argument is not an index. This is an index. This is not an index. What this represents is the number of things that I want to take out. I want to take out one thing from index number 1. So I'm going to go here, and I'll take out one thing. Okay? And what's interesting is it will not only do that, it's also going to return, it's going to give you back John, the thing you took out, in a new array. Okay? So it's like, if you have this Amazon package and you want something right from the middle of that box, you would use splice, and splice would put it in a smaller box for you. Okay? And it would give that box back to here. Single-term precedence. So we see what this gives back, right? Names, which is the original array, right, has John spliced out, so John's gone. And then instead, John is now given to a new variable. And if we console out that variable, it has John in its own box. Does that make sense? So if you want to take something out of the middle of an array, just define where you want to take it out. Like, what index do you want to take the thing out, and then the number of things you want to take out from there. Yes.
What happens if we don't define what we take out?
This thing. That's a good question.
Oh, sorry. What if you didn't do let single term precedence equal?
Oh, that's totally fine. That's a great question. So yeah. It only matters if you want to do something with it, right? So the question was, so if I do this, we get John packaged in this new thing, but if I do this, right, and I don't save it in anything in single term precedence like this is also fine, right? What this is going to do is going to go here, and it's going to take one thing out, and it's going to try to get something back, but like, since we don't really care about capturing John anywhere, we just care about taking something out, we can just like not assign it to a variable. And then names will be updated. So whether or not you wanna do something with whatever we took out is up to you. If you choose not to assign it to a variable, what happens is it gets garbage collected. It gets GC'd. It's garbage collected. So we have John in an array that's sitting at line 46, and since we're not assigning it to anything, it just gets garbage collected, and the JavaScript engine cleans it up. So another analogy, right? It's like taking something out of your Amazon package that's trash or something, or some of like the fluff around the packaging, you just throw it away, right? Versus like something that's valuable that you want to store somewhere else. So it's up to you what you want to do. Cool. So what you can do is you can define how many things you want to take out, right? The second argument is the number of things you want to take out. The first argument is the index. So I'm going to go to index 1, and starting with George, I want to take out two things. I want to take out George and John. So George and John are taken out, and they're assigned to across the universe, right? Which we don't have to do, but we're doing here. And then names, the original set of names, is just Paul and Ringo. So names was mutated, right? Names is not what it used to be after we use splice. And so splice mutates the array. Splice is an array method that mutates the original array. Unlike something like slice, right? Slice just takes out like segments of the array without affecting the original one. Splice literally mutates it. Cool. Does that make sense? Any questions so far on splice? There's a few more things you can do. Okay. So, what if you want to take something out and replace it with something else? Right? Then you can give it a third argument. Okay? So 2 is an index. 0, 1, 2. Okay, let's do something with Pete. Let's take out one thing. Okay, let's take out Pete. And then let's put in Ringo in place. Okay? So Ringo goes in here. And since we took out Pete, Pete is put in its own box and goes here. So this is kind of like an update, right? Any questions here? I don't like splice because there's too many things you can do with it. It's just so confusing. Cool. All right.
Alright.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You did dot splice 2, comma 2, but only put in Ringo.
Yeah.
What does that do?
Great question. So George on Thomas, let's say Ringo, and we're going to splice out 2 from Thomas. So Thomas and Ringo you want to take out, right? And then you just put in one thing, Bob. What happens is we go to index 2, we take out 2 things, and then we put Bob in its place. So the number of things you take out doesn't have to match up with the number of things you put in. Does that make sense?
You could put in like 5 things.
Yeah, you can. So here, I'm also going to put in A, B, and C. So what did this do? It went to index 2. It took out Thomas and Ringo. That's these 2 things. Take out Thomas and Ringo. And then in their place, we put in 4 things. And this is where it gets infinite. You can put in as many things as you want. Great question. And the next example is this. You can go to an index, right? 0, 1, 2, and take out nothing. And just put in Bob. So you're not really splicing anything out, you're just inserting wherever you want in the array. Versus push inserts at the end and unshift inserts in the front. Splice can be used to insert arbitrarily in the middle, as long as you put 0 as the number of elements you want to take out. And notice it takes the index that you define here, right? Like it might not be clear, but when you go to index 2, so you're Thomas and you take out 0 things and you want to put in Bob, you might be like, okay, well, do I want to put Bob in front of Thomas or before Thomas, right? It's going to go before. It's going to take the place of this index, okay? And same thing if you want to add multiple things, right? Let's say I want to put Bob and Billy in between John and Thomas, right? I just want to put it right here. So splice can be used purely for insertion. instead of splicing things out. You're splicing things in. Any questions? Cool. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for splice. We'll just quickly go over. Oh yeah, we'll go over a project and we'll go over this nested array real quick. Oh wow. Okay. So, let's do this. Let's do this. I'll do this. So, an array, right? An array can have multiple things in it. And, I mean, obviously. But an array can have anything in it, including other arrays. Okay, so this is like a box that has more boxes in it. How many elements are in this array? 2. 1, 2. Okay. And this is at index 0. And this is at index 1. Right? Okay. Now if I do related things, right, at 0, what do you think I'll get? What would this give? Do you think it'll give us windows? Or do you think it'll give us this whole thing?
Okay.
The whole thing, exactly. It's whatever is at that index 0, right? It doesn't, JavaScript doesn't care what kind of thing is stored there. Whatever it is, it's going to give back to you, okay? Well, now that we have this array, and this array is this thing right here, related things at 0. How do I get to Mac OS? Which index is Mac OS within this array? 1, right? And so this whole thing is this thing, so that means I should just be able to do 1. Does that make sense? Cool. And then how would I get to, let's say, New York? Which index should we start at? 1. Great. And then which index in this array is it in? 0. Great. And what's cool is this is a string, so I can actually go, I can index into a string too if I want. So let's just get to like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll get the y. Does that make sense? Cool. Let's see. Let's make it a little harder. We'll say 1, 2, 3. There's gonna be another array in here. A, B, and I'll put another array. And in here we'll say, wow. And should we do another one? Yeah, let's put this in another one like this. Okay. So let's try to break this down. And it's so much easier than you think. You just really start from the top. You start with related things, and then basically just like bury your way in. Well, what? Undefined.
You need to comment here.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Great. Oh, what? Oh, here. Great. Okay. So which index is this whole thing in? 2, right? We want to get to wow eventually, but let's start at 2. Okay, 2. Great. And then how many things are in this outer array? How many things are in here? 4. Yeah. Right? So 1, 2, 3. And this whole thing is one thing. It's just really gross looking, but it's one thing. And which index is this at? 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So the third index. Great. Cool. And so now we're looking at something like this, right? And this array has how many things in it? 3, right? It has 1, 2, and this unfortunate thing. That's 3 things. And so which index is this at? 2. Great. So this array, this outer thing, has how many things in it? 1. It's a box with a smaller box in it. And that's at index 0. Great. How many things does this have? 1. And so it's at index 0. Yay. Does that make sense? So whenever you're trying to dig in and find something you're looking for in a big nested array, you can just start from the top and like you know that you want to get to here eventually, and you know that that's surrounded by this thing. So it's like you can incrementally make your way down. Yeah.
So those last 3 indexes you added there, that was just to remove the brackets of the 2, 0, 0.
Exactly. It's because whatever this is an array, and the thing that I'm looking for is within index 2. So let's go in there, and then that ends up returning me another array, and that array has one thing in. Okay, so let me try to index it. Right, you're accessing things in an array, kind of like this, right? But the first thing in this array is another array. And so if you want Windows, you're gonna have to then, or Mac OS, you're gonna have to index it again. Cool. So that's nested arrays, right? Ooh, looping. This isn't as bad as you think. Okay. But let's do this real quick. Grids. So grids, I don't know why this is a separate slide, but it's really just a nested array, right? An array that contains smaller arrays, and it contains like whatever you want, right? And so let's see what this is, right? Grid at 0 at 0, right? Grid, which is this, and the 0th index is this first thing, right? And in that array, what's at the 0th position? 1, right? And here we have grid at the first index, and the 0th index of that is 1. And then the next thing, right? And then what did they do? They took all of these 1s and then they put it in a bigger array. So that's how they got that. And turns out that's a column, right? This is a column.
So how is that different than what the previous exercise was?
It's not different.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not different at all. But what this is saying is any game that you can think of that uses grids, that's like online, would use a structure like this. So you're playing tic-tac-toe, right? Like the game is going to be using this under the hood. If you play chess online, it's going to be using a grid, battleship, something like that. Does that make sense? Connect 4. Cool. Okay, let's do this real quick. Looping through a nested array. I know this looks horrifying, but it's really not bad. Okay. So we have this array, okay? And can you tell me how many things are in RSVP groups? 3. Yeah. Call this like people. So let's do a for loop. For let I equals 0. I is less than people.length. I plus plus. I'm gonna console log people. I'm just gonna console log I. I is just the indexes, right? This is index 0, this is index 1, index 2. Okay? We do people at I. We get Jane, Mel, Jack, and this. So what is this? This is each element in this array, right? People bracket I represents each element of the array. And what is each element? Each element is like I'm gonna call it like a group, right? This is like a group of people. This is a group of people, right? So we'll say group equals this. I'm gonna console log group, and we get the same thing. So okay, so now we have each thing, right? And our goal here is to like just console log every single name, right? We're going to log all the names as if they're not inside of any arrays, okay? So obviously if I just console log like this, that doesn't make any sense. So what we want to do, actually, how should we do this? Like now that we have people, or we have group, and group is something like this, how can I access each individual person? in this first case, how can I grab Jane and Mel? It rhymes with poor boop. A for loop, right? For, we'll say we have to use a new one. J equals 0. Well, actually, before we do that, I can't do a for loop across Jack because it's not an array. So group is a little confusing because it can be either an array or not. So let's first check that the thing is an array before we just decide to loop through it. How do we check if something is array? Array.isArray. Exactly. So if group or array dot is array group. So if the thing that we're dealing with is an array, right? Let's just console log the group just to see. Okay, we're only getting the groups that are an array, right? That's good. And so now we can do a for loop. We'll use J. We're going to go until the end of what? Yeah, this is the group. So we're going to go until the group.length. And then J++. And now I can console log group at what? J. Exactly. Exactly. Super cool. So I can call this, you know, each one of this is a person, or it's like a name, I guess. So I'm going to call this group at J. Each one of these things is a name. So I'll call this name. Great. And then here, right, if array.isArray. So what if it's not an array, right? What if the thing that we're dealing with is not an array? Like Jack. What do we want to do with Jack? Just console log it. Great. Console log group. Awesome. Does that make sense? So, basically, we want to grab each one of these names, right? And they're in nested positions. And so the way we want to do it is kind of like the exercise right before this, where we have to start somewhere. We have to start from the outside and then kind of make our way in. We have to start from the very outside. We have to start with people. I can't just jump right into like David. I have to start with people. I'm going to start from there. I'm going to see what is in this array, right? And I have this array, a string, and an array. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check, okay, the thing that I found, is that an array or not, right? Is this an array or not? This is, right? If it's an array, then that means I can do a for loop, right? If you get through this if statement, then you are safe to do a for loop because you can for loop across any array you want. And group is an array. So group is the array. And so you're gonna for loop from 0 until the end of group, grab each thing in the group, and then just console log it. And that was just a if statement, right? If the thing you grab, right? If the thing you grab is not an array, if it's not an array, then you go here and you just console log it. This is also where it's helpful to like isolate, right, and assign people at I to group, right, for nested stuff. So if we don't do this, the alternative is this, which like some people might get, but it's a little weird, right? If people at index I is an array, then let's loop through from 0 until people at I.length. And then we'll grab each name like this and then do this, right? It's a bit easier to see like this. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Solution if you have no idea how many levels of arrays are in this?
Yeah. That's a great question that you're going to go over with Marco. So, what if, right, just as a teaser, what if I have something like this? Like Bella. What if I have something like this? And then I console log this thing right here. Ah, that's annoying, right? Bella's in an array. So what does that mean? That means in here, the name is actually an array. And so I have to then do a for loop. Is name an array? If array.isArray, name, then do for let k equals 0 and go until k is less than name.length, right? So it's another for loop. Okay, that's great. What if there's another array though, right? What if it just goes n levels deep? And that is where you use recursion. Use recursion, where whenever you find any array, just apply this function that goes into it and picks apart each individual piece. And if that thing also happens to be an array, then use the same tool that we've been using the whole time. You'll realize the recursive solution to doing this is actually very similar to this. Just a few lines are different, but understanding it is pretty challenging. Good question. Okay, any other questions before we go into the project? Cool. All right, so as we mentioned in the beginning of class, there will be 2 projects throughout the course, and this is the first one. It's optional, you don't have to do it, but I would recommend it because it's very different and it's a lot more practical than the workshop problems we've been doing. The workshop problems are like the scope colons, right? What is the use of that? When would you ever build an application that does that? Here you get to build an actual Sudoku like app, right? A Sudoku, so we're gonna. I mean, it's available right now on LearnDot, and I can just show you real quick what it looks like. There's part 1 and part 2. And so part 1 is just like Sudoku is a logic puzzle on a 9x9 grid subdivided into 9 3x3 grids. Oops. The player is presented with a partially filled puzzle and must complete it in following these rules. Okay, so there's these rules. Each column must contain the numbers 1 through 9. Each row must contain the numbers 1 through 9. And each 3x3 subgrid must contain the numbers 1 through 9. If you've never played Sudoku before, try an easy puzzle from the New York Times puzzle section. Okay. Great. Great. And there's just some like advice and stuff like that. Okay, so getting started. To start, use an empty code ban or REPL it. I would definitely recommend REPL. Write the following functions. So get row. This function should accept 2 arguments. A Sudoku grid represented by an array of arrays, so they're going to give you this, okay? And a row index. So they're going to give you a big array and then an index, so like a number. The function should return an array containing the numbers in the specified row. Okay, so get the row for this whole like grid, and then get the column, and then get the grid, okay? So here's an example. So they're going to give you this, right? It's an array that contains 9 arrays. Okay, so there's 9 elements in here, and there's like the spacing, but like that doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't like make the indexes bigger or something. It's just like, okay, 9 rows and then 9 elements. And so if I want to get, right, down here, if I want to get row puzzle, comma 8, where puzzle is this whole thing. This whole thing is puzzle, okay? And I'm going to be given this whole thing, and I'm going to be given the number 8. And 8 represents an index. So I want to get the row at that index. And so what's index 8? Index 8 is the last index, right? Because there are 9 rows, and if we start from 0, the last index is 8. And so this is basically saying, get me the 8th row, or like the 9th row of the puzzle. And so it should return this sub-array. Does that make sense? And then get row at index 0, right? That's the first one, first row. And then get column. So get column at column 0. So what is that? 824956. 824956. Blah blah blah. Right. So it's like it's pretty fun. You get to build up these like basic fundamental stuff, and then you can check. Okay, now that I have this row, now that I got this row, is this a valid row? Does this have the numbers 1 through 9 in it? Right? Is this a valid column? right? Is this valid? Like, are there exactly 1 through 9 here? And if that holds true for everything, then it's a valid puzzle, right? It's a valid Sudoku grid. But this should like walk you through each step, and you can do like as little or as much as you want from it. Any questions?
So we're like building the Sudoku checker.
Yes, you're building a Sudoku checker. Yeah. There's like no deadline for this also, like, and it'll be available to you forever, so you can just do it like after you graduate if you want. But yeah, that's there. Okay, any questions on the project or arrays? Cool. All right.